Live from Lincoln and broadcasting across the state of Nebraska, it's the Average Joe Sports Show. This is the place for Husker sports with the biggest names, the best interviews, and all the inside scoops.
I got a front row seat.
Wow.
Big tub of buttered popcorn.
You got a reverb going on?
Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
No reverb on my end. It is the Average Joe Sports Show Weekend Edition. Kraynak, good to see you. Are you hearing yourself and myself and all elements of this thing's 48 times in a row? You look like you just saw a 57-yard field goal. Now he can't hear any of it. That's Bill Doleman. That's Elijah Herbel.
I can hear you.
All right.
Yeah, gotcha.
You got me?
You know what happens? What you should not do is have the live show going and our show, like the behind the scenes one, going at the same time. When you do that, you hear echoes. So I was hearing echoes. I thought everybody did. I was just like, oh, Elijah, why'd you hit the button twice? What are you doing? So, yeah, that's a great start. Great start. Sorry, I ruined your intro.
No, you're fine.
Set it all up. I ruined it.
It was wonderful.
Your voice in the intro can only make it better, Mark.
Oh, go on, Elijah.
Yeah. How are we doing?
There.
Are we ready for spring football on Monday?
I can't believe it starts then. Yeah. And nobody's going to be able to watch any of it. So it's just like intense speculation from here to August.
There'll be some open practices, but and plenty of communication, right? And
totally. You got people on the inside. You got security guards. You got like kitchen workers. You got
Old Father
coaches,
Hall.
You got you got binoculars. You're ready to roll. What are we hearing? What's the latest? Is Dylan Raiola going to lose weight? What's going on?
I think there's a wonderful get fit plan going on. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking offensive line and how are they going to shuffle that thing around. We might kind of pick that back up as well because, a number of dudes are out or limited in spring football. And you are down to 105, right? So that's what you got to rock and roll with. There's young names that you're excited to hear about. There's new names you're excited to hear about. So, hey, let's have at it. Some thoughts on the NCAA tournament. The SEC is getting blistered just a little bit. Husker wrestling is rocking and rolling. Bill, I know you've covered wrestling on ESPN for your career, which I'm going to lean heavy into that. We're big Mark Manning guys. Husker baseball, 5 hits, 10 strikeouts. Q Harry Doyle, 5 GD hits. That's all we got. 5. And
dude, they're struggling. Mm-hmm.
In the name and for the sake of, I don't know, mayhem, do you maybe lean a little bit into Creighton upsetting Auburn today? Who knows? But we'll get our starting 5 shout-outs going. Always appreciate you checking us out here on the Average Joe Sports Show YouTube channel for the weekend edition. We always say 7:45-ish. If you had 7:52 this morning, then you win a prize. We'll tell you what
second
that
one
prize
here, by
is.
the way, today. Second one here today.
No,
I feel like I get the blame a lot for this late thing, and then today you got Bill and Elijah just taking their merry time, and
my dog had a little extra work to do this morning, so I was not about to tell him to stop.
I'll point the thumb. I'll point the thumb, not the finger, on this one. It's the first umpiring Saturday of the spring, and lo and behold, we've talked a lot about the 09 Chevy Impala. I had the key fob that stays on my key ring. Lo and behold, at some point since the Chevy Impala has died on me, the battery has stopped working. So I had to go find my spare key to get my umpiring shoes out of the trunk. Ooh. So it was a heck of a morning trying to figure all that out. So I'll put on this one.
What are umpiring shoes? Turf shoes, essentially, baseball shoes?
You have turf shoes, then you have your plate shoes. You have the plate shoes that have they got a big plate over the front of them. So if any foul balls or pitches hit off your plate, break bones.
Yeah. Wow, that is a specialty order. I'd imagine you have to get that
Reebok.
Yeah.
Reebok makes them.
I thought they were just slip-on Skechers,
Yeah, it's kind of what they look like.
Velcro
Right?
strap or something. You know,
All black, right? All black.
All black. I
Yeah.
guess I got a little bit of gray on my field shoes. So the field shoes kind of like golf shoes. They have like they're not like cleats on the bottom, but they got the little rubber, whatever you'd call them, grippy things, so you can.
Do you go shield or chest protector, or what do you?
I go shield.
The shield's pretty outdated. Just to let you know, the people who just have the thing across the front.
No, I know, but there's an ump that still does that.
That's old school. That's old school.
It's kind of cool though.
I actually got a brand new chest protector. It arrived at my house yesterday, so I was wearing that around last night while watching basketball, trying to get it broken in a little bit, making sure it's fitting just right.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Why don't
I'm excited for the new chest protector.
could you dress like that for us next time? On this show. No.
It's
Remember-
Friday. It's Friday cosplay on the next Average Joe Sports
Exactly. Like finally.
Show.
Do you remember the days when the American League umpires wore the maroon jackets and like had blue hats? They dressed a little differently than the National League umpires when they had two different leagues, two different presidents, and then they would put that the memory foam chest protector up right before the pitch came in.
Yeah.
And then drop it down, but they wore the maroon jackets.
Mm-hmm.
Old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how about that that'd be even better. Take the cosplay to the next level.
I have been thinking it would be fun.
Vintage.
Come like state tournament time. It's always in like the playoffs where the umpires start busting out the old like the jacket. The one I'm talking about looks like a sport coat.
Yeah.
Sometimes wearing behind home plate. They only were pulled out late season. I think it'd be good. Nebraska high school umps should get to wear the sport coats for big games like that.
So I'm sorry to distract here from this and going down the umpire rabbit hole, but that job sucks, right? Because parents are just all over you, right? Like, or do you find that the games that you ump, everybody's just civil and just fine? Like everybody's just yelling at you all game, right? Like,
no, I wouldn't. Not everybody. Not everybody.
But enough people.
I would say enough people go to the baseball game with a part of baseball being complaining about the strike zone. That's just a part of baseball.
Sure.
You have to expect it a little bit. You can also take care of some things on your own end as an umpire by, being a good umpire. That helps. And there's a difference between moans and groans and personal attacks, and you usually stay away from the personal attacks. So, you can't
rolls right off.
I say you can't be thin-skinned to do it, but it's not as bad as you may think. There is
bounces right off that new chest protector of yours, right? Just like,
I mean, hey, I get to deal with all the comments here in the stream chat Monday through Friday. I think I can handle some baseball parents.
That's true.
Baseball.
I think
parents,
Elijah's pretty good at his job, so he does a pretty. There's some respect. There's the mustache authority. And
that helps.
Brandon Vogel going to be with us from counterread, counterread.com in a little bit. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, Dancing Shoes Sharp with his Omaha experience on the road with the NCAA tournament. He'll be with us here about 8:30, and we'll check in with Vogues. Let me get the
quickly. I don't think I've ever told this story because we were talking about baseball parents here. I've ever told you about the morning I showed up to umpire a youth baseball tournament, 8 a.m., a little bit hungover, but not like extremely hungover. In first game, 8 a.m., who's behind home plate but Chris Schmidt?
Really?
Yeah, I don't even. This is when I was first starting out with you.
Okay. Yeah, that was early. Was that high school? Was that high school or was it travel ball?
That was travel.
Isn't in the stands.
We were out at Mahoney. Yeah, Schmidt was in the stands, and I was umping for Carson.
Okay.
Did Junior get a tiny strike zone when he batted and a big one when he pitched? Or
everyone got a pretty big strike zone that day. My umpiring partner didn't show up, and I was solo.
And he was seeing 3, so he just said, "Screw it, we'll pick the one in the middle."
Do you ever call a strike or a ball, and it's just a brain, like you literally meant to call the other thing, but you just kind of had a little like wires got crossed, and you're just like strike, and you're like, but it's a ball, and then do you change it or you just keep it? Has that ever happened?
It's happened before, and it hasn't happened recently. That's like a young umpiring mistake thing where it's just usually it's like you first start seeing some breaking pitches. And it's coming in, and before the ball breaks, you're expecting in your head like, oh, it's a strike, oh, it's a strike, oh, it's a strike, and then it drops off out of the zone, and you still call a strike. Well, you can kind of work past that though.
Okay.
All right, let's get our starting five. Shout outs, Brandon Vogel coming up. The other Dave says, looking forward to this before my golf game. That's what you thought the other Dave. Thank you for checking in. Kobe is here. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Uncle Larry saying what's up. Walter, just south of Philly, says Nebraska's offense averaged 23.5 points a game, which was ranked 103 last season. Justin is here. Jake, good to have you. Tuck is here. Let's make it an average day. I like it, Tuck. Appreciate that. Brian Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, another lackadaisical performance on the diamond, highlighted by Carey getting backpicked at third, which would have been an RBI single. Coach Brandon's here. Good to have you. NASCAR Eric, what's up? NASCAR Eric. Bill Doleman checking in. I like that. Captain is here. Captain, good to have you. Also checking in this morning. Brandon Vogel with us from Counterread, counterread.com. Vogues, you fired up. It's Spring Football Monday. I know we talked a little earlier in the week, but I want to kind of bounce off of Walter's comments and go on the panel with this. Points per game. Have you been repeatedly mesmerized at how few points Nebraska scores on offense? And Walter kind of follows that up with Indiana's offense pre-Signetti was at 22 a game. Last season, they averaged 41. If we're scoring at home, they put up 56 on Nebraska. Let's talk what you need. And I know my magic number is always 30. You score 30 in the Big Ten, you win most of your games.
Yeah, in the Big Ten, that's doing pretty well with what that conference historically does from a from a defensive perspective. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know how many times. So 28 is about the college football average every year. I don't know the last time Nebraska was above 28.
2018. They had
2018. There we go. Yeah. Okay. And then I think 2019, which was supposed to be, okay, now you can get to 35, which in like my own kind of internal accounting, I think is the top end and probably where Nebraska needs to be. You can do this a bunch of ways, of course. Like take the Iowa example. Like you want to win 9 games, you need about 10 points per game differential. So how does Nebraska make that happen? Last year they were at like I think 23 and 20 allowed thereabouts, offense to defense. So however, if the defense steps back a little bit, just given all they have to replace, then you got to make that up offensively. And I don't think that's the worst bet to make with Holgorsen and a second-year quarterback. But until you see it happen, as you've said, Nebraska just hasn't been an above-average offense very often of late, really for most of the Big Ten era.
So this is so just sad to start the morning like this. In 2023, I knew it was low, but do y'all remember what the points per game was in 2023? Like, I think we probably blocked it out.
22?
18.
18, yeah.
Dear Lord.
I know. And in conference games, it was 15.4. Like,
that's Iowa.
It's a touchdown and like 3 field goals, kind of, or something, right? It's just not even
3 field goals.
Well, yeah, they couldn't kick those either. So, oh God, 15.4 in conference games. Last year, that jumped to 20. And that progression. See that?
Do you remember the days when it used to be, oh my gosh, they're averaging below 45 points per game and less than 400 yards on the ground? You know, you'd wake up in the morning and you grab the newspaper and you look at the agate copy that would have the NCAA leaders in points per game, and Nebraska would be always right near the top with BYU averaging about 47.5 points per game, and with Air Force and Army averaging 435 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
And that was just a given. And I'm like, and then it was like, they're averaging less than 40 points per game and less than 300 yards on the ground. What's wrong here? Well, look, Nebraska's numbers better be skewed for 3 words: Akron and Houston Christian. So that bad boy better be way up in the 40 plus after the first 3 weeks of the season. And then you can go play the rest of the Big Ten schedule and see what you can do after that. But no more playing around with some of these teams that, you're giving them a big paycheck. You might as well put a big number on the scoreboard just to skew that a little bit. Because I don't want to see 18-15 ever again.
I'll say
Houston
this.
Christian fan in the stream is like, what?
Why are you mad at me? Yeah. No, I'll say this, though. At least Nebraska put up 42 against Wisconsin last year. I mean, typically, Wisconsin has a good rep. Fickle's a defensive guy. Whatever you think of them, they're hard to score against. Not last year.
Tough
for
guys
many
at
people.
the second level, especially. Right.
So Nebraska in a third game, I think, with Dana put up 42. They left so many points on the field, Vogues, last year. But really, since post-Bo, they have been, and I thought it was a Langsdorff thing, and I liked Danny, but you just like, all right, pro-style offense. It's going to be 24-21. Why, in your estimation, is it so hard to score points in the Big Ten? I mean, Ohio State just won a national championship. Michigan just won a national championship. And there's been teams that they had a hell of a time about 2 or 3 times a year putting anything above 17.
Yeah, it's hard to explain why, other than I think it's just kind of the culture of the Big Ten. A lot of times I think we use the weather to explain that, which I do think is part of it. Matt Rule certainly talks about that all the time, but I think it's more just kind of they played the football that way for a long time, and it's been there. And in some ways, Nebraska is kind of like the perfect test case for that, more so than Maryland or Rutgers when they came in, because they were at a different spot. Nebraska came into the Big Ten on a high. We all remember they were picked to win the league in 2011 and ended up playing in the conference championship game in 2012. And those teams were able to score a bit, more than a bit. But then you had the coaching change. You went to a pro style offense, which you can certainly run pro style sort of stuff, I think, but you need elite talent to really get the most out of it, which is why most teams in college football don't go that way, is kind of my opinion. So we'll see. That'll be one of the more interesting, I think, things for the spring. Rule has talked about how Holgorsen hasn't changed the terminology, like he's not coming in here to install the air raid, which I fully believe. But is it more of a college offense than what we saw through the first 9 games, honestly, of Nebraska last season? I think that's one of the biggest things that I would like to have answered for 2025.
If this is just an aside, but if Holgorsen did come in and just install the air raid, do you think Husker Nation would freak?
Not if it worked. I mean, honestly, I think at this point it's get points on the board however you could, and if you do that for a season and a half, then you might get to a point where it's like, yeah, a little bit worried about the run game. I'd like to see that a little bit higher, but also don't have any high profile, 4th and goal from the 4 incompletions. That would help that.
Brandon Vogel with us from Counterread, counterread.com. Patrick in the stream with a question. Appreciate everyone checking us out here on the weekend edition on YouTube with the Average Joe Sports Show. And he says, is anyone concerned about a Raiola sophomore slump? And that's been a talking point. What do your second-year guys do? Are you more towards all right, you waded through some choppy waters as a freshman. Do you follow up a freshman year with a good second season? The Barneys, the Vincent Shavers of the world. There's others, obviously. And then there's also the talking point of, all right, what do you get from a and I'm not picking on him, but Cam Lenhart's a second-year guy that I think about that, all right, really flashed as a first-year guy. But, I mean, he did his job, and there's no complaints about that, but he didn't really probably flash as much if you ask some Nebraska fans. I want to dive into the Raiola expectations for year two. And there's been plenty of chatter about the body weight and the workout and be a little bit quicker and leaner and use your feet and all that. But I fully expect, and Rule said it because he's right, you're not treating him with kid gloves. You get a guy of this caliber, of this ilk. I mean, you're going to play early, and we expect you to play well because you have the talent to do it. Well, now he's got the coordinator to help go along with that talent. I think he's going to kill it this year if Nebraska is to have success. He's got to be, a 30-7 guy, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions type setup. He's got to be upper 2000s, 28 to 3,000 passing. And that's okay because Vogues, technically he'll have some mates to help him. He'll have a 1,000-yard runner in Emmett Johnson. He'll have at least 1,000-yard receiver. And I know I'm putting lofty numbers out there right now, but that all kind of goes back to the comment from Walter about how many points are you putting up a game. I mean, it all ties together for me, and I have that much faith in Dana Holgorsen. Honestly, I think he's that good.
Yeah, I think that's the big factor here for me. To the original question, are you worried about a sophomore slump? I think it's right to always consider that. Like, whether it's with Nebraska guys or looking at teams throughout the conference or the country, it's fair to assume a guy improves, particularly if he's playing as a true freshman. But it doesn't always happen in a clean way of just like, you just move up the ladder. So it's right to ask the question. I think the reason I'm not as concerned about it, to Schmidt's point, got to bring the interceptions down, which if you do that, touchdowns might go up. I don't know if they'll get all the way to 30. Some of that will depend on supporting cast. But by the PFF numbers, Raiola was, I think, top 25 in terms of turnover-worthy throws. So that's good. That's really good for a true freshman. And I go back to, I think he was over 70%. I think it was around 73% in those 4 games with Holgorsen. That's encouraging. That tells me they were able to narrow things, simplify a bit, and get to the reads and throws that Raiola was ready to make as a true freshman. Now, at the point that Holgorsen stepped in, was he really a true freshman? He'd played a lot of football. But that's one thing where I think you could hope you at least maintain that. And if you maintain that high of a level over the course of an entire season, you've got something.
I think if he can, and this is a high expectation or a high goal, double his touchdowns and cut his interceptions in half, you'll have a hell of a season. And as I said, last week or a couple of weeks ago, instead of 20 yards in losses, you got to have at least 20 yards in gains on the ground, and that'll be a great season. I think he kind of went through a sophomore slump after he had the incomplete pass in the Illinois game, and he ran head on into Big Ten play, and there was an adjustment period there. Well, now you've been through it once, so the expectation should be higher, that you've already kind of gone through and taken your lumps through Big Ten play. Secondly, or maybe third or fourth, however many points I'm brilliantly making right now, he's got a little more competition at quarterback than he had a year ago. You had Heinrich Harburg and Jalen Gramstead, and that was it. You were going to be the guy. You're going to be the guy anyway this year, but now you've got a freshman coming in saying, I do want your job. Well, Latif's probably going to play 4 games, if that. He's going to get a red shirt. And then you bring in, was it Marcus Davila from Purdue, who was a 4-star.
Marcos, good baller.
Marcos, right. So you've got a little more competition in the room that if you're not pulling the trigger well and you're struggling in the second half of games, I said this last year. I thought they should have sat him down and gone through some teaching sessions with their iPad or their whatever computer they have down there, their Commodore 64, and played Harburg a little bit more at quarterback and just giving him some in-game coaching as opposed to just go out there and take every snap like every NFL quarterback does, and we'll work on it Sunday and Monday in film. If you've got some serviceable or better than that quarterbacks to play behind him, then put a little heat on him to let him know that you're not immune to being benched if things aren't going well. And I think that should be a lot different if he's as competitive as everybody indicates that he or says that he is.
Kraynak, I want to throw this to you. You have an offensive coordinator that's not afraid to hold any quarterback accountable. And I think that is going to be big to the success part of these numbers we're talking about here with Dylan and the avoidance of a sophomore slump. I mean, I don't think Holgerson cares. You're not doing the job. Hey, Marcos, put the old clipboard down and warm up, son. I mean, and that's good. That's still Bob Knight theory since it is NCAA tournament time. The motivation, the ass, the bench. I mean, that whole brilliant commentary. But I mean, it needs to happen for young players, and they need to be able to take it the right way.
Completely. I think Holgerson's kind of magic this year will be making sure that Raiola doesn't overthink stuff, you know? And I think that's one thing you worry about from freshman year to sophomore year. Freshman year, you're going through it. You're learning it for the first time. You're seeing the big venues for the first time, the speed and how that changes from when you're in practice to when it's in a game. Learning how, how to deal with your adrenaline, how to play for 4 hours straight and stay at a top level. They don't practice for 4 hours, right? It's a different deal when you're playing in the games. And so you don't want them to overthink stuff and just be able to let it rip. And that's the thing that I'm most bullish about is I think Holgerson understands all that and keeps things relatively simple, right? Doesn't let you get in your head too much. Sat as an OC is a catastrophe of biblical proportions, says Walter. He was not great. Let the numbers show. And so the things that you worry about with Raiola, I think they're subtle, right? It's not big things here, right? Are you worried about him standing in the pocket because he's scared? No, right? You're not worried. Are you worried that he doesn't have a good arm? No. You worried that he can't, throw finesse passes that are, just over a linebacker and right. I mean, some of his like 400 level passes were unbelievable as a freshman. I'm actually more worried about some of the 100 level stuff, the deep ball. I don't know why all of a sudden he wasn't accurate on those. I think if he was, you're looking at a different season last year. He's just he was overthrowing pretty regularly, so can that get fixed? By the way, thing I heard about why he put on a little bit of weight, don't know if this is true. This is like through nutrition circles. Too many shakes. He used to like to drink the shakes. Like he always had a shake. And they're like, Dylan, we got to chill on the shakes.
Some of us put vodka in our milkshake.
Who knows if that's true? Who knows if that's true? But
hey, Schmidt can attest. Those liquid calories are sneaky.
They are.
You don't know. Like a light beer has still got 100+ calories in it. Those Gatorades have a whole bunch of sugar in it.
Water.
I'm with the White Monster today. Only 10 calories in the White Monster.
And you too can advertise on the Average Joe Sports Show.
I made this joke yesterday. I'll say it again. The White Monster I'm drinking in honor of that one guard at Drake that went and kicked Missouri. Oh, White Monster? No.
Okay. Vogues, where are you at on the old shake take?
On the shake take? I mean, sure, adds up to me, but
yeah.
Well, can I ask this question just to kind of put this whole conversation in here? So we talk about the quarterback competition with Latif and Davila, and the thing is it's still the foregone conclusion that Raiola is going to be the starter and it's going to be his job sophomore year. So can you actually call it competition if we all know what the result is going to be?
Well, I think we know what the result's going to be, Vogues, right? I mean, wouldn't that? It's not open.
I think
do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's open, but I think it's closer to competition than it was a year ago. To
Right.
Bill's
Yeah.
point, you've just got like Jalen Gramstat, super intriguing. Like it was encouraging, I think, to hear Rule say, like if he had to go in the game, like I would have no issues with that. Which is good. That's what you hope you get with a guy like that who was one of the best players in the country at NAIA. Yes, that's a big jump. You still don't expect that guy to come in and really challenge, but a second year in the system, you know, maybe you can raise the level a little bit. And with Marcos, you hope that is the case too. You just look at that group last year in terms of raw QB talent based on their recruiting profiles. He's higher than anybody they had behind Raiola a year ago. So you hope there's a little bit of that. In some cases, I think the switch in offense should help Raiola, but it also might help those other guys too in terms of being a little bit easier to operate. I kind of liken it to, you can tell when your computer is using a program or a website that just requires a lot of processing. That was the Satterfield offense. Like the fan was spinning. You're like, oh, this stinks. Everything's slow and gummy. And Raiola missed some of those reads because they were kind of complicated reads. Holgerson, clean website, like you don't worry about it. It just operates smoothly. I think that's what you hope the difference is. And I think it's a little bit of the difference we could see over those last 4 games last year.
Brandon Vogel with us here, weekend edition of the Average Joe Sports Show. Can find and like and subscribe. Average Joe Sports Show, YouTube, AJ Sports Radio on Twitter. And like and subscribe and follow Brandon Vogel, Aaron Sorensen, counterread.com. Some spring football thoughts as we move forward. Vogues, what do you think or feel about the offensive line? I know Elijah and Bill and I got heavy into it yesterday as far as some reshuffling going. I want to get your thoughts here moving forward. The task at hand is what for Donnie and company with so many guys out this spring?
Yeah, you're going to have to use it, obviously, I think, for a lot of evaluation, which isn't the worst thing. You can move some guys around as well. Center with the departure of Ben Scott, that's a pretty big one. Like he came in and was exactly what you paid for in this era, and it's like, here's a transfer. He was our starting center for 2 seasons, and that was that. So you got to find a way to replace that. I think where Rocco Spindler kind of fits in determines a lot of those potential moves. But to a large degree, this is going to be kind of the laboratory setting for a lot of young guys. And it's going to be, I think, fall camp before you really can start sorting that out when you look at guys like Prohaska, Corcoran, who have played, well, I guess Prohaska unfortunately hasn't played as much as he probably could have, and as anybody wanted to see, could have based on his talent. So there's just a lot of pieces to sort out here, and Rule talks a lot about kind of that classic O-line progression. They're going to need to see it from some young guys who have been in the program a little bit.
Let me throw this out to Brandon and Mark because I threw this out yesterday. You're at 105, and you have 2 veteran offensive linemen who are injury prone. And as you just noted, Teddy hasn't played a full season. If you get to 105 cut down day in the fall, not after spring, do you make difficult decisions and have difficult conversations and say, we thank you for your 9 years of service through COVID to Teddy and Turner, and say, we have to go with younger players who are maybe not have the same experience and are close, and they are not as injury prone. Do you have to have those difficult discussions and perhaps not put them on your 105?
So my answer, that's a great question. And just so even imagining that, you sort of empathize with those guys and Rule of just like, man, that is tough. Guys that have like gotten their knees shredded on behalf of the team, right? Like trying to do well for the team. Like you can criticize them all you want, but those dudes, right? They gave what they could and they got ripped up. It's not their fault. If it's any position except the offensive line, I think it might be an easier discussion, right? You shred up your knee as a receiver and now you run a 4.8. Sorry, man. We got to go. O-line's different. Like experience matters a lot on the O-line, more than any position, probably, right? That and quarterback, probably. So you cutting loose a 5th or 6th year guy, even from a morale standpoint, it's also the most hierarchical position. Like the young linemen always look up to the old linemen, and the old linemen are always like surrogate fathers to the right. It's a different room. I don't think you can do that, but at the same time, you can't go 7-5 either. So that's a great question. I don't know.
It is. I think I'm in a pretty similar spot. I think if you were to that point where you're at 107, 108, it's like, all right, 3 or 4 guys got to go. I think they would look to almost any position other than O-line if the option were to cut veteran players, because all the points Mark made were great and spot on. You also just need to be, 6'3", 305 to even be an option there. If you lose a slot receiver, which like in this case it would be, a Ja'Cory Barney, that would be a significant loss. But like you can play some different cards. You can bring over a DB. You can try out, maybe a young running back there for some snaps. Like you just have options. But with the O-line, it gets particularly difficult, and it depends on how many O-line they're carrying too. So yeah, that's a tough one.
I would hate to see that happen. Just on the record, I just throw that out there for
I
discussion.
don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it. You've got to pad in the and I know that it's the roster's 53 active, 53 developmental. I get it there with the 105. That being said, you need your injured reserve spots, honestly.
Yeah.
And I mean, because if you go at the young guys, I mean, and there may be more talent, right? You go get a Pritchard because he's an investment to start on the right side, but you don't give up on a Kraynak or developing guys behind him to either step in or go beat out the investment. But there's so many war stories, Vogues, that especially Teddy and Turner can tell, where they got thrust in, and Turner was the original, where he's as high of a guy as you've gotten in forever recruiting.
Yeah, in the recruiting rankings. Yeah,
he's a recruiting win from the 500-mile radius for a struggling program. He gets thrust in and did really well against Rutgers, and then the following season didn't go so well. They move him to guard. He gets hurt. He keeps getting hurt. I mean, he's a guy who's had to battle those demons mentally and then physically as well. He wasn't ready physically to have as many snaps, and it didn't go well. Then there's Teddy, who's the next phenom, in-state phenom that plays early, looks good against Oklahoma, right? And next thing you know, it's a knee injury, gets whacked against Michigan. What could have been? So you've got some mental scar tissue. Both these guys can help the rest of the room overcome the young players. And oh, by the way, the ability to persevere and find their way back onto the field for 5 years or 6 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate with, I think, both Teddy and Turner that by circumstance, they kind of had to be thrown into the mix at tackle at an early stage. This happened to Tyler Moore too. And it's just, I can't think of, I'm sure there are some, but I can't think of a ton of success stories at Nebraska over the years where like a guy had to play as a true freshman on the line and it just worked out. Now, at this point last year, before Prokoska's injury, like it looked like maybe that was going to be the case. Like he got thrust in there as a true freshman, and then he was ready to win that job as a sophomore, and then an injury happened. So, I think with the veteran O-line guys, they're unique. I look at what Notre Dame needed to do last year, and they had veteran guys that they expected to be starters get hurt early, but they played so deep that by the time they got to the championship game and suffered more injuries, those guys were back in the mix. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's an extra value for just that veteran piece of it. But it's a tough call. And to the commenter who said, I'm sorry I missed the name, but if they can't produce, process them. I think that's one area where having a former NFL coach might be a little like a slight leg up, because rules done that. Like he's been
You have
there
to.
with that piece of it, compared with guys who have been in college their entire careers, who tend to do pretty well in the college game. Like, not being in the NFL, I don't think it had really ever been a hindrance to a college football coach's potential success. But now things are a little bit different. So we'll see.
It does change the mindset too as a head coach, right? As a college coach, because it is a business. Like, straight up. We can talk about all the kind of, I don't know, Pollyanna stuff of playing for the team, do it for the name on the jersey, not on the front, not the back. And that's all part of football, of course, right? You do have to build a unit, but straight up, it's a business. Like, it legitimately is. And it's kind of like, careful what you wish for, right? Players wanted to get paid. They deserve to get paid. Well, the game's changing on you a little bit now, right? And if you're, maybe that helps Rule sleep at night a little bit better, knowing that, hey, end of the day, any one of these guys could bounce, for an extra 50K down in Manhattan or wherever. They can take off at any moment. So that's the game you have to play now. But on the offensive line, especially with guys like Turner and Prohaska, when you consider that Raiola is going to be coaching, this is going to be year 5 for Raiola, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm talking about Coach Raiola, right? Because he would have been brought in 2021. Was it 2? Because he replaced Austin in 22.
Yeah.
So this is
Right?
year 4?
Year 4 for him. 4 different offensive coordinators. Right? So this is going to be his first time having kind of like back-to-back offensive coordinators. Well, I guess it wouldn't be, because he would have had Whipple, he would have had Sat, and then now Holgerson.
How do you not have an IV of vodka if you're not Donnie with those OC choices?
Right? But I mean, honestly, in offensive line is all about continuity. Like, it's the longest one to kind of stick. Like, you need, okay, what is our vision? What are we going to do as an offense? Okay. Offensive line is probably the last one to take hold, to be able to adjust to that. And he's just had to adjust up and down and left to right. It's been kind of tough. So saying all that to be like, I think that it makes those veteran guys even more valuable, right? Of just being able to kind of, they've done it all, they've seen it all. And I'm not sure. And if you look at their positions that they play, it's tackle, right? Can you rattle off all the great tackle talent at Nebraska that's waiting in the wings? No, tackle's been a struggle for a while now, right? You got Pritchard, of course, in the portal, and then you got some of these other cats, like you mentioned, Kraynak. You got some, I think, Seagrin. You got some walk-on types that are maybe coming up, but they don't make too many human beings built like Prohaska. I mean, that's a 1 in 20 million body type, right? The guy is an absolute monster. It's a fascinating question, Bill. It really is, just to try to figure out how you managed all that. What was that?
Give him to Fred.
Yeah, seriously, man.
Vogues, what do you got coming up here, bud, with Counter Read?
Well, to the comment earlier, talking about points per game, that's kind of the next thing on my list to hit on next week. Monday, I'll kind of have a weekend recap of what happened in Huskerland. The women fell a little bit short last night, of course, but wrestling's got some things cooking, and try to avoid we'll see how things go, but try to avoid baseball at the moment. But hopefully that changes soon enough. So that's the immediate future for me.
Well, appreciate
We
you,
all
man.
have as many clutch hits as the team does right now. My God, you know.
Flip it
Sad.
around, get the live chicken, Jobu's rum, all that good stuff. Vogues will holler next week. Appreciate you greatly. Thanks for joining us.
Sounds good, guys.
There he is, Brandon
Brandon.
Vogel with us.
What they
here.
do to Bill? Oh, there
He's back.
Hit the
Gary
wrong button.
Sharp says
Little
we're
magic
on
trick.
to football. The Iron Horse with
But
us.
we're going to stop
Jeez.
off on wrestling first today. Hell of
Yeah,
a
well,
weekend for in Philadelphia for Mark Manning.
Yeah, that's
Hold on a
incredible.
second, though. Hold on. Something I was thinking about in my week off. I was thinking a lot about Gary, right?
Whoa.
Because typical.
While you were with your fiance.
It wasn't. No, they weren't simultaneous. It was
Okay.
things like
Just checking.
when I was showering and went to the bathroom, and it could be alone. No, I was thinking though, and I don't know where we would even find this information, but are there any other broadcasters who have taken a team to their first ever NCAA tournament twice, like this guy has? Right? Because Gulf Coast had never been, right?
They had never
Oh,
been, and
sweet.
they were
Okay. And then Omaha.
I stole so much stuff. I don't even know if they'll play in Providence today.
You know, this is this is live on the internet. Be careful.
The keys to the building.
But honestly, so Gary took Gulf Coast to the NCAA tournament, their first ever NCAA
I took the
tournament.
thing off the. Look what else I stole.
And then he took UNO to their first ever tournament. And I was just thinking, what are the chances?
I'm expecting him to pull out the game used basketball next.
Let me guess. I'm guessing you checked a bag.
Oh no!
No, the NCAA paid for that flight.
Gary's got a piece of the net somehow. Like Gary's on the ladder.
I got Patino's suit coat in my back room.
You've got the Godfather 2 outfit. Is that why he's not worn it?
But it's a true question. There cannot be, like, what are the chances of that? What are the chances of being able to take, as a broadcaster, 2 different teams to their first ever NCAA? That's got to be just you, man. I think it's just a club of only Gary. And
Thank you.
What is that like, by the way, when you're vibing around the team? You're around them all year, right? Then they get to the big dance. Now, Gulf Coast played so loose and free, and they were a whole different style. They probably didn't change a whole lot between what they were during the season to when they got to the big dance. How about Omaha? Did you notice kind of a difference? Could you tell it was their first time?
No.
Did they seem like they were just sort of the same as they usually
They
were?
they had a terrible matchup. I mean, So if Bryant and St. John's had not played during the regular season, Omaha would have played Michigan State and Cleveland. But Bryant and St. John's can't play again, and both Bryant and Omaha are 15 seeds. So that's how Omaha ended up playing St. John's. It was a terrible matchup. St. John's is really good. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're like gifted where you go, oh my God, but they play hard and they turn the water off. They're the best second half team in college basketball. And Omaha could have actually been up 7-10 at halftime on Thursday night. They just didn't hit some shots, but they were only out rebounded by 2. They had 24 offensive rebounds, which is the most that a Rick Pitino team has ever given up. They turned the ball over less than St. John's. They just couldn't hit shots, and then they had a really bad turnover at the end of the first half that ended up in and 1 on the other end. So instead of maybe being tied at halftime, you're down 5, and then and St. John's gets the ball begin the second half. They hit a 3, and it was all downhill. And you were playing a road game. I mean, I bet there were 10,000 St. John's fans there. Wow. But it was an incredible experience, and I hope that everybody, all of you guys have gotten to experience at different levels, or seeing like Nebraska in person. It's unbelievable. It's the great sporting event. It just the one thing about it is we were talking about this when everybody came back yesterday, is you get a taste of it. Like when you're at this level and FGCU and Omaha, when you're at the mid-major level and you're in conferences that only have one bid, you get a taste of it and you want to go back, because the first time you're there, you're not overwhelmed, but you're trying to take in everything. Like there is so much going on, that you're like, okay, I don't want to miss a moment. Then kind of like the second time you go, it's like, okay, it's basketball. We've been here before. We know, we're going to get a police escort from the arena to the airport, to the airport, to the hotel, to the hotel, to the arena, to wherever we go. There's going to be a lot of attention around us. So you're used to it the second time. But I'll tell you what, it was an incredible season, an incredible run. It was a great team. It just disappointing on Thursday night. But St. John's is really, really good. And seeing Patino up close, he's a small fella. He's a little fella that has never missed an F word that he did not, pass down.
How about his team's effort level though? Seeing it up close on the floor, that it has to be very dispiriting to go against that level of pressure that long.
And it is, and I will give credit to Omaha. For the most part, Omaha hung in there for a while against it, but it's on a whole different level. I will tell you, watching the game before, like when we're all, you sit in the stands like at PBA or you sit in the media, you're a ways away from the floor. But when you sit right on the floor and watching Kansas, Arkansas, and the athleticism and the size, it makes you really think, man, Nebraska fan this year. Like Nebraska's team last year was athletic and they were physical and they were big and they looked like dudes. This year they were slow and prodding. But when you watch a high-level college basketball game with just absolute dudes, and that's what you can see in Arkansas and St. John's today, I mean, it's like, whoa. And that's what it was. Yeah. But St. John's, they're built with football players that have basketball ability.
Yeah. There's a lunch pail. It's some lunch pail style ball for sure.
You don't see that in the Summit League, unfortunately.
No.
And I don't think there's going to be anytime soon you're going to see that in the Summit League.
Is by the way, you think UNO is poised to, NIL and that with that whole game, how that's changed quite a bit. And Crutchfield is one of those deep recruiters. He will find those gems and guys like to play for him. They identify with him. Are they poised to do all right recruiting wise and to make a run, or is it tougher for the mid majors in the era of NIL, or for the low to mids? Is it going to be tougher for them to keep up?
They have the bull market is the collective with Omaha, and last year, and I've told this story over and over. They got a great logo too. They offered more money to Frankie Fiddler than Nebraska did. Now I don't think Frankie was ever interested in Nebraska, and it was just I don't know. It was like, hey, I'm from Nebraska. I could go visit Nebraska, and so Nebraska made an offer. But they're in a good spot. They're going to lose Markel Sutton. He's got an extra year eligibility with junior college. So he already told the guys, the coaching staff, in the middle of the year that he was going to go. And they're encouraging him because before the NIL deals fall under more of an umbrella July 1, there is so much money going to be out there for college basketball. And even college football players, if guys who, you'd think, oh, they're not going anywhere, want to jump in it, it's going to be wild before July 1 and the revenue sharing kicks in. So he's probably going to make a lot more money than he would have last year. The key for Omaha will be JJ White, their point guard, who, he said one thing Thursday night. There's a lot of stuff that he tried that he couldn't get away with against St. John's, that he can get away with like teams in the Summit League because he's better than them. But he dribbled himself out of contention Thursday night. I mean, he was worn out 10 minutes into the game because he was dribbling all the time and they made him work. So if he comes back, they'll have 4 of their 5 starters back. They're already recruiting. I know a couple of coaches went out this morning to go recruiting. So the expectation has changed where it's not, hey, you're going to go to the tournament every year, but there's no reason why you can't be competing because you've turned the corner.
Yeah.
Gary Sharp with us here, Week 8 edition, the Average Joe Sports Show. Bill Doleman, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Sharpie, I want to get a thought here on wrestling with Mark Manning. You opened with it. I want to go back to it.
Hey, man.
20-3 during the session yesterday, number 2 in team scores, just behind Penn State. 8 All-Americans. That's a record. 3 NCAA finalists. Most points that they've ever scored in the NCAA. We try and check in with Coach Manning 3-4 times a year, and we love the guy. He's so passionate. His The commitment to excellence is very real. He finds guys that just want to compete, and he doesn't really bat an eye at what he requires. But he is such a throwback in a great way. That's a compliment with the way he runs his program. And man, there's so many Nebraskans right now in the stream, and either casual or fringe wrestling fans or diehards that have all kind of put their arms around each other this morning, really smiling about Nebraska wrestling and a men's sport, honestly, that's delivered.
Well, and here's the thing, you know, Mark has been the head coach of Nebraska wrestling forever. And, you know, he's one of those guys that we all have a relationship with him because he's great to the media, because if you want to learn his sport, he's going to teach it to you. Mm-hmm. But he likes to talk about other things. You know, I mean, he's got a son, by the way, that's a pretty good high school quarterback over at Lincoln East. So he is Lincoln, but I've known Mark for a long, long time. And, you know, with Nebraska wrestling, and you're in a conference that has got maybe one of the greatest dynasties in the history of NCAA sports, and that's Penn State wrestling right now. I mean, they're a juggernaut. I don't know how people are even going to come close to them. So you're trying to think, okay, they're in our conference. We've got to learn from duels that we face them, or at the Big Tens, or when we get to the NCAAs, how do we have the roadmap? And, you know, there have been times where Nebraska's come up short in the Big Tens or the NCAAs, and we're like, well, does Nebraska need a change? And you're like, no, they've got guys, but do they have the guys in the right spots? Here's the thing about what they're doing in Philadelphia. And they had a really, really good dual meet season, and they were okay at the Big Tens. They weren't outstanding like they are this weekend in Philadelphia up until last night. This is the history of the NCAA tournament with Nebraska there. They've never eclipsed 80 points as a team. They finished the night with 101.5. Okay. They're up, 10.5 on Oklahoma State, which is in third. That's never happened before. Yep. And they're going to have 3 cracks at individual titles for 3 guys that have been in the program for a while. And one of them we all watched wrestle at Millard South and Antrell Taylor. But Brock Hardy and Ridge Lovett have been 2 guys that you seem like, Jesus, did they get like 4 COVID years? They've been around for a long time. So it's a wrestling program that, you know, has always had success, and it's had stars, and its biggest star, Jordan Burroughs, kind of opened up the door for people to go, okay, let's learn more about, you know, Nebraska wrestling. Isn't it interesting that they're doing this not very far from where Jordan Burroughs grew up, you know, and they haven't had, since Jordan Burroughs won 2 titles, they haven't had a lot of individual titles. You know, like Jordan Burroughs in 2011 was on the biggest stage. It's been a while since Nebraska's captured that big stage. I'm so happy for Mark Manning. I'm happy for the program. You know, I was able with my schedule to get to a couple of duels at the Devaney this year. I went and watched them actually wrestle Penn State. It's a great program. They represent the program. People sometimes forget about it because not everybody understands wrestling or is into wrestling. But I can tell you what, you're into Nebraska, and this is such an easy team to root for because they're blue collar. They work hard. They enjoy their success. They probably do. They enjoy their success. They celebrate their success. They got a winning culture, and I can't wait to watch it tonight. I mean, I think there might probably around here, if you go to a sports bar, damn, you better make sure, you better tell those people that are running the TVs at the sports bar, March Madness is in Philadelphia. It's not in Lexington, Kentucky.
It'll be on. It was on last night.
By the way, I don't think I think they've kind of been told not to have sex during this run up to the NCAA.
Women weaken legs.
Yes.
Rock.
Hey, it works for it works for the Spaniards and the Germans in the World Cup.
Yeah, boxing mode translates to wrestling. Okay.
I've maintained this that the NCAA wrestling championships is the best championship of all that the NCAA puts on. And as much attention as people put on March Madness, the greatest, well, I'm not going to say the greatest, one of the greatest things I've ever seen in sports, the little Husker sports, was when Jason Kelber beat Terry Brands for the 126 championship in Iowa City in 91 or 92. I fell in love with that, with the event. I went 3 or 4 times after that. The parade of champions on Saturday night before the finals, the raised floor, the spotlight on. I mean, it is amazing how great that show is. And as great as, you know, last second shots are and all that in the basketball tournament, you get chills watching those guys go out and do what they do. And When I was a student, I was the wrestling SID, sports information contact for wrestling for a couple of years when Tim Newman was the coach. I did some wrestling with Nebraska Public Television, and Bob Fears was the analyst. And there, it's the greatest sport. Ed Oliverdi was the PA announcer for 100 years for it, and he'd always say it's the world's oldest and greatest sport. And Nebraska fans are going to really enjoy it. Mark Manning's going to be the national coach of the year. He has to be. And last night watching the semifinals was basically, I thought, a 2.5 hour, 3 hour infomercial for Nebraska wrestling, because they just kept marveling. And I think Jordan Burroughs is on the call, but they kept marveling at what Nebraska was doing, and even talking about the wrestlebacks for the All-America, for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th places. And so it was just a lot of fun. And I'm with all of you. Everybody loves Mark Manning, who just seems like a big Husker fan.
He is. You remember? Okay. So a couple of things. When Bo was the head coach here, Manning would spend a lot of time over at football practice. Yeah. He dressed up one time as a football player, and then when Scott and his staff got here, they would go play pickup basketball, and Manning would join in. Now, the one thing I said to Mark not too long ago, because we were talking about something one of his former wrestlers, like maybe 10 years ago. And I said, "Why did you let your hair go?" I go, why did you used to color your hair? Because, all of a sudden he went white. And I said, "Here's the thing, coach." I go, "You can pull it off." I go, "You look great with it." And he's like, "Yeah."
It's longer.
He goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I look like," and he quoted the movie. He goes, "I look like Will Ferrell from when Eastbound and Down, when he made an appearance on there, and he had the white hair." He's a character. You're right, Bill. He's a great ambassador for Nebraska.
Yeah.
He is a Nebraska fan. And I think people dabble in his program, and they watch it, and maybe they think, all he has is James Green and Jordan Burroughs, but man, they got some good dudes in that program. And I'm so happy to see this success. And I would love to see 3 individual champions tonight, because those 3 guys, they are badasses. And I will tell you, I was worried about Taylor because he didn't have a great year, but man, on that stage, he has taken off.
Yeah, you got 3 guys, right? You got Brock Hardy, top seed, Ridge Lovett, 2 seed, Ontrell Taylor, 3 seed, and it's 141, 149, 157. So, yep. So points wise, for folks that don't follow wrestling, me, how many points can Nebraska still get? So they're in second behind Penn State. Say Brock Hardy wins by a pin.
So
what does that mean points wise?
So Nebraska has 3 wrestlers into the championship. Penn State has 3 wrestlers into the championship. You get 16 points by winning first. If any wrestler gets first, you get 16 points. You get 12 if you finish in second. So I believe Nebraska is going to be unable to catch Penn State.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is going to turn into a runaway.
Yeah,
but that doesn't take anything away from Nebraska as a team, what they've done. And it's not just the 3 that are wrestling tonight. Another thing that Nebraska has done that has helped them is guys that maybe got beat early in the wrestlebacks have been really good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because those happen during the day-to-day too, right? Before the finals at night.
Yep.
And that's what, like the wrestlebacks getting All-Americans. That's why Nebraska set a program record here this weekend with the 8 All-Americans. Like, yeah, the 3 guys into the finals, that's incredible. But all those guys that have been putting in work on the side mats, the ones you can only watch on ESPN Plus, those are the guys that made this a program record-setting weekend.
Okay, I've got something just popped in my head here because Nebraska basketball is still playing.
The Crown.
Should after what's happened at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia this weekend, should Nebraska men's basketball move back into the Devaney Center to play their games? Because it seems like the teams that play in the Devaney Center are having pretty good seasons.
Well, I love what Penn State does, where they go do the one game in their old whatever hall they have, which is literally just like it's a gym within a not a residence hall, but it's like within like an actual college on campus. They have some basketball gym. I'd love to see one Husker basketball game back at the Bob every single year. I think
I would like to have seen a couple of Nebraska games at Maple Lee this past season. That would have been better. And put the towels back over the doors like Danny Nee did.
Bill, I found out something. I referenced Mabel Lee on my show. I didn't realize they tore it down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What the
What
hell
about
are
the
they building there?
Coliseum? Can they throw basketball back in the Coliseum for a day?
Hey, the Coliseum is a banger. What they did with it to turn it from volleyball and wrestling and everything, all the the other Olympic sports that were in there to the rec center. I was in there not too long ago. That's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: this would be the problem though. If you moved Nebraska basketball into the Devaney Center to play a game, would they bring their own floor? Because they can't play on that floor they use for the state championship because you'd be confused. There are so many friggin' lines everywhere.
Somewhere Rick James is smiling.
But hey, here's a quick thing on the Devaney Center because I know you guys want to move on to a couple other things. Is I took somebody to actually a wrestling meet at the Devaney Center this year, and that's the first time they had been in the Devaney Center since they reconfigured it. So that just shows you how long ago.
It's been a while.
I think they told me their last time they had been in the Devaney Center was like 2009.
Wow.
And I was like, it looks a little bit different.
Yep.
And I don't know.
They're expanding it, getting more seats in there too.
Yeah, up on where the standing room only is at the top, where a lot of people are for volleyball. That is a jewel. That place is an absolute jewel. Bill was referencing the showcase that they have for the NCAA men's finals tonight. The way they set that up for wrestling is even better, where they have all the fans line up and they basically create their own tunnel walk and the team comes out, but they have the elevated floor. And the only thing in the Devaney Center that is lit up is the floor. That building is such that is such what they did to the Devaney Center, because it was kind of a dump at the end of basketball being in there. Yeah. To turn it into the palace for volleyball and for wrestling and gymnastics, that's pretty damn impressive. That's I don't think people talk enough about the new Devaney and how cool it is.
Sharpie, while we got you, want to spend a minute on spring football that gets underway on Monday. And we've talked quarterback, we've talked some offensive line. There's the second-year guys. There's the young names you want to hear and see things about. There's the new faces. And how you feeling about spring? Let me just start there.
First of all, it seems like we haven't had football in a long time. I'm excited for it. I mean,
yeah, same.
Who cares what happens at the end of April? We'll get there when we get there. But it's football, and there's a lot of questions to be answered. And also, it's Survival Island. They got 25 guys they have to figure out what they're going to do with. And there's a lot of new faces and new coaches. So we'll see how this all comes together. Also, I think the depth chart will start to shake out a little bit, in certain areas. They're like the defensive backfield. What's going to happen there? What's going to happen linebacker? It's going to be a very intriguing spring. Like there's nothing really set, but there kind of is, because you go into a spring who your starting quarterback is, and you already have a sample size of what he can do. So I think there should be a lot of optimism and excitement around spring football. I will tell you this. So in the Providence Regional, Pete Thamel was there. So the Pete tweets, he was hanging out. He's always working. He's always on his phone. He's always on a computer. I said, what story are we breaking now? So I talked to him for a little bit. He loves Matt Rule, because I was like, hey, like if you texted Rule right now, would he give you a scoop on a story that he won't give to any local people? And he just kind of laughed and he said, yes, he would. But he loves Rule. And he said that his last discussion he had with Rule, that Rule thinks that they are very, very optimistic, because it's not just, hey, we got guys that are buying into the culture. He said this is a team that is like really talented. Like they have some dudes. Instead of, okay, we're going to be talking about the culture and the mentality. He said, you're going to be talking about guys that are dudes that can play the game of football and play the game of football at a high level, which I think we're all excited about. Get rid of all this other outside noise BS about, hey, are they buying into the culture and they got PTSD? Let's talk about, do they have good football players? Do they have enough good football players to make it through 12 games where they come out the back end and they have a record that you go, all right, here we go? Because I also think, guys, and I don't know if you feel the same way, it's not a year three thing to me, because I don't think you can compare Temple and Baylor to Nebraska. This is the time, because it's Matt Rule's Nebraska football now. It doesn't belong to Scott Frost. It doesn't belong to anybody else. You've got the leftovers have run out of eligibility. This is your program with all of your fingerprints all over it, everything you've wanted in your program. It's either this is the year where you're going to go up, where you stay for a while, Or we ask the hard question when the season is over, did Nebraska really hire a 500 coach who came to Nebraska and was still a 500 coach?
Well, can I ask the question? Because I've brought this up multiple times in the show over the course of years now. I think the benchmark for Nebraska being back and being good at football is, are they churning out first-round draft picks again? The teams that are good in football across the college football landscape, year in, year out, have first-round draft picks. I want to ask the question to the room here. We can go around the table here. As you look at the 2025 roster, are there any dudes, to get back to Gary's point, that you think are first-round guys this next year? Who is the dude on the
this next year
in 2025?
This next year being the key there. So you're not saying ever first rounder. You're saying in the next draft, first round.
Yes, or guys that I guess 2 drafts from now, people are saying, you know what, that guy's going to be a first-round draft.
Well, I mean, the obvious is your quarterback. Is he a first round? Does he develop into a first-round guy? I mean, you have an expectation that 5-star quarterbacks, it's like 8 of them, right? They turn into the first-round guys. And if Nebraska is going to go where they want to go, it's going to be, yes, defense, but it's going to be your quarterback play that is your separator. It's going to be your quarterback play in a league that is a 1-score game every Saturday that's going to put a 2-minute drill together or a 4-minute offense like they got pulled off at the Pinstripe Bowl and win the ball game for you. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not ready to say he's a first-round guy in 2 years. I think
the conversation is who's got that potential? Who's got first-round potential, right?
On this current roster?
Yeah, Raiola's definitely that guy that has that potential. You'd have to say Pritchett. We don't know if he's that good, but in terms of athleticism, measurables, and all that, he's exactly what NFL is looking for. Yeah, Winery is also a super freak, right?
I got 2 guys that could be first-round picks next year that I don't think we talk about enough. One is because it's a weak wide receiver class, but Dane Key's a guy that, based on what he put on film at Kentucky, is looking to be like a back end of the second, top end of the third round guy. It's a really weak wide receiver class next year. If he goes and plays really well, Mark, athletically might not be there, but they get technicians that end up being first-round draft picks. Like, he could be a guy that with a solid year has some discussion of being around that. But defensively, I look at Sierra Wright. Sierra Wright put a lot on tape last year. I think he's got speed. From a measurables point of view, he's not like the super freak athlete, but he's enough where I could see him sneaking into the back end of the first round.
He's a willing hitter too. He's a willing hitter.
Let me, and this is, that's a great question, Elijah. Let me add to this. So let's say, and it's important for dudes to get drafted, okay? Because that's a sign of you're able to get them in your program, whether you develop them on your own or you get them as a rental, but you're getting dudes to the league. And teams that have multiple dudes that go to the league usually have pretty good years. If Nebraska is to do that, and I'm wholeheartedly with you, Elijah, outside of like left tackle, what's another position that Nebraska, because, you know, we went through runs of running backs and offensive linemen here, another position outside of tackle or anybody on the offensive line where Nebraska needs to start a run of top 2-round picks from that position?
Rush end.
And with that, you say, okay, because what you just said, Schmidt, is kind of like Iowa. Iowa gets first-round offensive lineman, usually a defensive end, and then what do they do on the back end?
No.
So my backup answer was going to be secondary.
I'd say
you got to have
the secondary. I'm more concerned with not first-round picks. Nebraska having a handful of day 2 guys in rounds 2 through 4. I mean, that to me is where you're going to have a depth of talent in the program. Not that you hit a home run and somebody got a lot of marquee attention on day 1 in those 15 minutes. It's, you know, how often are you hearing the name? Just a little bit like wrestling last night, like, oh, they won again and they won again and they won again. And this is it's a great run with this team. Nebraska needs to be on day 2 after all the bright lights are a little dimmed and the focus is on football players, which is what rounds 2 through about 5 are. 6 and 7 are still getting drafted, but it's who's still left. And then you start talking about non-drafted free agent contracts on day 3 of the draft. But if you're a consistent topic of conversation rounds 2 through 5, and maybe you have on average 5 a year, and that's where you have developed a professional development type program. But if you just hit a home run on day one and have a first round pick, that to me that doesn't tell you that you have depth in your program. You nailed it with a guy. It's the depth. And when I was working with Ted Sundquist, he used to be the general manager of the Denver Broncos during a couple of the good years that they had. He always said it's rounds 2 and 3. That's where the best players are who are going to translate into winning NFL teams. And that's what Nebraska needs, is to dominate, or not dominate, but to be a headliner on day 2. Then you've got a program.
I think totally. And I think kind of what we're getting at here, because you do need that depth in order to move forward as a program, rather than a, random Randy Gregory or Trey Palmer. Like that's nice to have, but I think it's you need to get more production out of guys that aren't necessarily just overachievers, right? I feel like Nebraska's kind of top production guys have been these marginally talented overachievers, which is great. You need to have those on your team, but they can't be your top production guys across the board. I mean, think about, let's take Reimer, for example. Reimer had track speed, but he's like 5'10", 205 maybe, right? He's just not big enough, like at all. And he overachieved and became a super productive, good linebacker, right? What about getting those guys that do have the NFL measurables, that do put up those Reimer numbers, that could probably make a few more splash plays, right? And then you have a litany of those guys. That's when things are different. Like where is I'm going back to the 90s or whatever, but guys like Troy Dumas, who was a freak physically and an overachiever. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for people that have both. Toby Wright, God, I mean, just go on down the line. At almost every position, you had these really talented dudes overachieving. So right now, you got marginally talented dudes overachieving.
So this is a good discussion, because if you look at, the top of the recruiting rankings that came into Nebraska, Nebraska hasn't had a lot of, like, Raiola is one of the most recent guys that has popped, and he's no way finished product, but like the top guys that Nebraska's brought into their classes haven't been necessarily their best players.
They don't produce,
and they don't stay here. Like if you go back to the run in the 90s when recruiting started to take off, and you saw more of the recruiting rankings, Nebraska not only hit on the middle of the class, and they developed some guys that needed time to develop the bottom, but it seems like they were banger after banger. If you were a top level guy coming into the program, you left as a top level guy. And that's what Nebraska needs, more top level guys if they want to get to where they're going. If you want to say, hey, we want to be a development program, but we want to be a development program that's got dudes that walk in the door and they're already dudes. If you can blend those two together, then you're cooking with peanut oil. But that's just been over multiple staffs, is the top end guys don't necessarily leave as the top end guys. Credit to T.O. People will say, man, Nebraska got these classes that they just developed. Bull crap. They got some dudes. And those dudes were even better when they left Nebraska.
No, that's really it, isn't it? You get a guy that's supposed to be good. He turned out to be good. It's a two-way street of they live up to their hype. You live up to your hype as a coach, and you go kill people in the Orange Bowl. I mean, it was good. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Think of this, and this is what I kind of start with, right? And it's the 86 defense, right? Where I'm a kid, we're all younger, and you've got 3 first-round guys on that defense. It's Broderick, it's Neil Smith, and it's Danny Noonan. And who's in the recruiting pipeline? A guy like Mike Kroll, okay? And that's after Broderick Thomas, who, by the way, got drafted higher than Broderick Thomas as rush end.
Kenny Walker's down in there. Yeah.
Right. And then you go from, Broderick and Mike Kroll just went to the NFL. Who's next? Well, then you get into Trev Alberts, okay, rush end guy, who is 3rd pick overall. Then you get into Wistra. I mean, you have Steve Warren, you have Bad Mother Rucker, you have Mentor. stackage, the 3 deep from about 84 through 98 was untouchable. It was incredible. And that's how you win football games.
Yep.
You have a Will Shields, you have a Grant Wistrom, and the line play wins. But no, this will be good, man. This will be good to see what shakes out. And
hey, can I throw out a,
Yep.
because we'll have plenty of time to talk about position battles. I'm going to be a weirdo here. The position battle that intrigues me, not the most, but one of the things that I think is important in the spring is Nebraska was pretty lucky to have Raiola start all 13 games last year. I mean, that's the first time since Tanner Lee in 17. So we know, and the offense was a little bit different. So the quarterback didn't take the beating that Adrian took guys that were running that previous offense. So it helps, but I don't want to tempt the football gods again when it comes to injury, that maybe Raiola is dinged up and has to miss a game. I'm very interested in the backup quarterback race, because Graham Stad, he, other than being the human victory cigar, it's not like he came in for a series at USC. And then I love JT Lateef.
Mhm.
And then you got Davila, who was a Dana Holgerson pick. Okay. If Holgerson's not at Nebraska, I don't know that kid's at Nebraska.
he's not.
And he was a 4-star. So what does the battle look like behind Raiola? And is it a good enough battle that the guy that is in the first chair in the room would feel some heat on his neck if he didn't perform up to expectations?
Sharpie, I'll take this. We'll go around the room. I think you have, we said this earlier, you've got a coordinator right now that if your quarterback that's supposed to be this first rounder we're talking about isn't performing, Dana will have him sit or stand next to him on the sideline. He doesn't care. He's not afraid to make a change if it's a performance issue or if there's an injury. No, you went and got insurance with Marcos. Yep. You went and got insurance. You've had some insurance as well with Graham Stad. But no, their plan to me is, all right, Dylan, go kill it. Thank you. Go off to the NFL. Marcos, you be waiting in the wings to develop and get good. And I see something in you. Because you went after him when Dana was at Houston. Lateef, we think you're going to be special, dude. Take this first year to just kind of get groomed and then be ready to compete for it post Raiola, whenever that is.
I just don't see it that way, though, with the way the transfer portal is in the modern era.
No, you're not going to keep everybody, but you got him here for now for when you need him. Break in case of emergency.
Well, the backup quarterback battle to me is the battle of who's going to be the next quarterback in waiting after Raiola. I think whoever is third string on the depth chart probably sticks around, but you don't stick around as a lot of these guys highly recruited. Both of these guys both were. I don't think the third string quarterback stays around and says, you know what, I'm going to compete for it next year. I think whoever wins the backup quarterback job this year is the quarterback that's going to stay. Whoever loses the quarterback battle is probably going to go, with Dayton Raiola eventually coming in and taking over the next quarterback in waiting job. Like that's how it's going to go. So I see the backup quarterback battle as whoever steps in and wins that backup quarterback job is going to be here. Whoever loses that backup quarterback job is probably going to be sitting on the bench for a year, and then they're going to enter into the transfer portal.
If you really like the kid, I mean, you can always get paid to stay. If you really, as a player, say, all right, Dana's a hell of a quarterback coach. I'm going to learn and be a better quarterback because of being with this guy.
Wait my turn.
I'm going to grind away.
That's just not the reality of what college football is nowadays with the transfer portal. Guys don't
disagree. I don't disagree at all.
That's what makes this interesting to me, is because Lateef has been committed for a while. He's a guy who's wanted to be a Husker. Davila was a guy that, from what I understand, was silently flipped to Houston whenever he was a Purdue commit, and then Dana Holgerson gets fired, and he goes, well, I guess I got to stay at Purdue now. And now Holgerson gets the job. He comes here. I mean, that's more of Holgerson's handpicked guy, but Lateef is the guy that was highly recruited and you've wanted here. It's interesting because I don't think both of those guys stay on roster long term. That's what makes the backup quarterback battle interesting to me, is who's going to be the next quarterback after Raiola.
Real quick, let's go back to what we were talking about with talent and getting production out of your top end guys. Let's just look at 22 and 23 recruiting classes. Listen to these names. These would be the top 5 names rating wise industry wise, right? So across all of them, these are the sort of consensus top 5 guys. O'Shawn Mathis, would you say you got overachievement out of him?
You got the Iowa game out of him. That was it.
How about Jaden Gold? Who exactly? Anthony Grant. Anthony Grant, you got some production out of him.
Junior year AG was fine.
Anthony Grant was a good one of 3 running backs.
Yeah,
but you were forced to have him more as RB1.
I mean, he
was a good wee back.
He didn't live up to a guy that's going to be a top 5 in your recruiting class kind of guy.
AJ Allen left, and then Janiran Bonner. Okay,
He's still, who, by the way, people forget about. He's still here. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, get some good production out of him.
He should get a little bit more discussion, man. He's going to do something in the spring, and his name will get mentioned, and someone will go, "Oh, I thought he like left, or I thought he ran out of eligibility." No, he's still here.
I like him. He's a poor man's Debo. That's what I think about him.
He got a little more use after Holgerson started calling plays. Those
he's last year, the big kid.
There was more Bonner.
Versatile.
Let's be honest, Bill, because you had you had an offensive coordinator who could not consume all the information on the Cheesecake Factory menu. then you had a OC that came in. His play sheet is like half of this. So you get the ball in the hands of guys that get the ball down the field. So I think that's where he benefited. And I think like those kind of guys will benefit even more because everybody will have a designated role. Like, we know what Bonner can do. Well, they'll put him in that position to do it. When he's on the field, they're going to be like, hey, that's the guy. But yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of his. I would like, just kind of like Bill, to see him a little bit more.
Same. I like him a lot. I think you can put him in the slot, put him in the backfield. He's physical blocker. He's a lot. In 2023, your top 5 guys: Malachi Coleman, Prince Will, Riley Van Poppel, still to be determined, Cam Linhart, pretty good, Ethan Nation. Right, so you're talking out of all 10 of those guys, all 10 of your top 2,
3 left.
Yeah, you got like 3 left, and they haven't necessarily been production guys yet, right?
The 3 that are still here have made some plays to give you encouragement.
Exactly.
At least
you call them
bus
you have that, right? Yeah, you can't call them bus, but
no,
those guys, majority of them left.
Van Poppel, I think is going to be. I think it's going to be great. And he and Leonard have played behind Hutmaker and Robinson and rotated in on. They've used 25 guys a game defensively. Right. So I think Lenhart and Van Poppel have been terrific additions. I think Bonner is going to have probably a breakout season, and Anthony Grant, like as mentioned, was serviceable as a wee back. So I guess that's 2.5, 3.5 of those 10 players you mentioned.
Yeah,
and Let me go back to real quick on the quarterback and the backup situation. This is going to be the first time that Dylan Raiola has ever had any competition or heat. This is the first time he's played at a school back-to-back years. So, I mean, every place he's gone, I've mentioned this before on the show, through 8th grade until they got to Nebraska, he was at a different school every year, and every school that he went to, he was going to be the guy. But now he's at Nebraska for a second season, and this is a time when you're going from one year to the next where, you're the starter, but now they're bringing in some competition for you. There was really no competition going into last season. You had Heinrich. Yes, you had Danny Kalen, as was mentioned earlier, but Kalen was not going to play any more than 4 games. He ended up playing. I don't think he played any. Should have got in for mop-up duty at Indiana. But this is the first off season that Dylan Raiola has gone from one team to the same team. And they brought in some players behind it to compete. One who said, I'm competing for the job, and that's TJ Lateef. And then you've got Marcos Davila. Okay, and they love Gramstad. But this is his first time working in the same quarterback room than ever. 7th grade, 6th grade, flag football.
That is some commentary right there. I mean, think about it. No, I think competition is needed. I think it's warranted, and I think you're wise if you're Nebraska to go bring in these options. Now, can they go perform if called upon? That'll be big. That'll also be big to be able to handle adversity when it comes to the competition part. If you're Dylan during this spring session, and then how do you translate handling adversity / opportunity in some gut check moments on the field? That's what I'm excited about with this program here. Offense, defense. How do they move forward in a big year 3?
Look at, if you're a quarterback, you essentially have 2 quarterback coaches on this staff.
I know.
You know, who's actually running the quarterback room? Is it Dana or is it Glenn Thomas? So you do have 2 quarterback coaches because Dana, I mean, look at once he took over as OC, his interaction. I mean, here's the thing. His interaction with the quarterbacks seemed to be more involved than when Satterfield was the OC. And you know, Dana is not afraid to tell you what he thinks of your performance, good or bad, even if it's during the game, between series. So that quarterback room, they're going to be coached up, man. Then it just becomes down to, can you make the plays? Can you get the team in the right formation? Can you change the play? Can you diagnose everything you're going to see? And then, oh, by the way, go and do your job. And we know that Holgorsen has said that's one of the things that attracts him to Dylan. I mean, Holgorsen is staying here for a reason. It's because 15's the quarterback. That's his project. 15 is going to help Holgorsen get the next job that he wants. Holgersen's trying to help Dylan get the job that he wants, and that's in the NFL.
You do wonder about Holgorsen too, just with his kind of mentality and how he rolls. I wonder if he really does want another head job. The way he talks, he seems content with, you know what, I kind of like calling ball and not having to worry about calling boosters. You know, honestly, it just seems like, and especially if you know, what is he? He's late 50s, early 60s. I'm guessing.
Data's early 50s.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, do you want to go back and do that? Because his trend as a head coach wasn't great, right? As a head coach, the trend line, it was, and I wonder if it's just not a great fit for him, and he'd rather just call ball. So, but
if 15 in the next 2, maybe even 3
A
years,
phone call to be a head coach.
yeah, your stock is going to start to rise.
He's done too well. He did well at Houston. He did well at West Virginia. And you can hire nowadays, if you go to the right program, someone to handle all the peripheral crap.
Especially with GMs coming on board now too, that could change things.
I think Dana's trying to follow the Chip Kelly mold. Go be an OC and try to get your spot in the NFL. That's my take.
Or just keep killing it here. You do well here. You like it here. Just keep getting a raise every year. Be the highest paid OC in college football.
Well, we'll see when that money from Houston runs out.
No, I know.
But you know what? I mean, he's here for a reason. I don't know that, you know, Raiola said that's the guy we want as our OC, and they made sure that he stayed here.
Mm-hmm.
And he appears happy because he's doing exactly what he wants to do, and that's just calling ball, sitting around a room talking ball with guys. And now look at, here's the one thing that I think I'm very encouraged about Nebraska's construction of a roster is they have a quarterback, okay? And they're only going to go as far as 15. But they're not saying put on the Superman cape. They're saying join the rest of the Marvel characters.
Right.
Because look at, they have built around him. They have given him options that are going to catch the ball or even run the ball or block for him. Could they be better in certain spots? Yes. But it's not like they drug their feet and said, okay, we got Adrian here. Adrian's going to save the day. Let's worry about something else. Just think if they would have built that roster stronger around Adrian. They have built the roster better in 1 year in the offseason around Dylan.
Mm. Well, it goes back to your staff, what you've hired, who you've brought in, what you've shifted. Kraynak has doing an oil change right now, switching computers like he's NASCAR Eric, man. I love it.
He's got more money than us four combined. Why do we have computer problems in his 8-bedroom house?
You know, I haven't been to Kraynak's 8-bedroom house before. That's pretty cool. I didn't know he had a west wing of the estate.
The guy invited me over and somebody parked my car. Now, I don't know if it's a bad neighborhood.
No, that's a you thing. We didn't get that treatment.
I walked in and someone offered me a hot towel, and I'm like, am I at the Kraynak or Isha house?
Sir, would you like a hot towel? How much shit did you steal? I love that. I mean, you're going and grabbing and grabbing.
Now the word steal is a little bit can be debated in court.
So
if there's some things,
tell me more about your souvenir collection. Is that better?
There were a lot of signs. Yeah, there were like things that I know like after tonight in Providence, they're just going to throw them away. Sure. So instead of throwing them away, why don't they give them to me for the man cave? That's how I kind of looked at it, but I didn't find anybody I could ask that question to. So I just went ahead and did it to save them the hassle.
You're better to ask for forgiveness than permission, right?
That's exactly right. Now, there was a game ball that was available, but I just didn't feel right.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
Well, that's hilarious.
But they do give you the one thing about the last 3-week run of Omaha men's basketball. I may not ever have to wear anything that does not have a March Madness or Omaha basketball.
You even got more gear than when you left Sunday, right?
Adidas loves when you make the tournament. I mean, I've got sweatsuits where, I look like a stormtrooper. I would never wear those in my lifetime. But I'll have them in the closet. Maybe I can give them as a gift. But yeah, you get a lot of gear. And then you get there and the NCAA has gifts for all the players. Well, the radio guy gets gifts as well. So let's see here. Oh, I have socks.
Okay.
March Madness socks. I have a flag.
Nice.
I'm not sure what this is. It might be a backpack or something like that. I'm not sure.
Sling,
flask.
Yeah. I got. I will like they do a really cool thing for the players. Like it's a hell of an experience for the players and everybody that's involved. In the lockers, they have these specially made, nameplates, and so they want the kids to take them. So they have that memory, and it has their name, their number, the school logo, and then the March Madness logo. So.
Nice.
Yeah, I was expecting Gary to have a backboard and a breakaway rim positioned above him, stolen from the East basket in Providence, but apparently that got absconded in TSA.
No, they did have like the game didn't end on Thursday night into Friday morning until almost midnight. We didn't walk out of the arena till like 1:15 local time. There were still security guards on the floor, so I did not feel comfortable enough because there was a really cool, like on the people that watch the game in Providence today, on one of the basketball standards, there's the March Madness like peel on. And I'm like, like if in one fell swoop when I'm walking by, could I grab a corner, rip it off and keep walking?
Gary, with the Storm Super tracksuit, I know you said you're not going to wear it. That seems like something that put it in the will. Get yourself buried in that.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, he's going to pull it out.
Hold on.
Have you guys thought about what you want to be buried in someday?
That's a little morbid.
No.
Yeah.
Mark, we'll get you in the Braves hat. Sure.
Wow.
These are the pants. Yeah.
Okay.
What? Hold on. I missed that part when I was switching machines, and now I got angelic light behind me. But pants you got pants at the tournament? They gave you pants?
Yeah. So
warm up stuff, right?
Yeah, so we got 2 full sweatsuits.
What?
Yeah. One is it's pretty cool. But the thing about it is I tell everybody, only on my driver's license am I 6'2". So wearing those pants that are made for basketball players, I look like I'm like Skilo. Yeah. If you know, you know.
Nobody else
see you bumping around town in those because it's probably a little obnoxious. It's probably like all like it looked like shiny white, right? And then you can get like a Kangol hat and just kind of
Yeah, like
Just
Adidas.
do it up.
Adidas
Ralph
takes hey,
Cifaretto Sharp.
Adidas, because there was a couple other Adidas schools that were of the 8 in Providence. Adidas takes care of their schools, man. Yeah,
It's good
but I
gear.
also learned something. Going as a 15 seed, we had a really nice hotel. We were in Warwick, Rhode Island. Beautiful area, by the way. I did not know that it was that close to the water when we were flying in. And someone goes, "Hey, there's the Atlantic Ocean." I'm like, "Oh, and there's Rhode Island, and there's Providence." And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, so everybody's like, oh, I live on Newport Beach," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." But if you have the better seed, you get the better hotel closer to the arena.
Is that how that works? Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we stayed in the same hotel as High Point.
Okay.
Is that why Northwestern? I'm assuming they do that in the Big Ten tournament too.
I think so.
Remember, Northwestern had to stay at a travel lodge or something with no
La Quinta.
no air conditioning whatsoever. Which I was so sad I didn't get to join the show last weekend because that was just perfect. It was like such a shout out to Gary.
Yeah,
the one thing though, this Crown Plaza though, it would only go up to 82.
They had a granny switch, did they?
No, so you got to understand, like if you guys
governor on it.
You guys traveling this spring and summer, if you go to a Marriott, you can get it up to 85. Any other property stops at 82. So plan accordingly if when you're planning your sleep schedule.
I have never tested that, but I'm glad to know it.
You guys don't understand. Just do it once, sleep one night in a hotel room where you're not paying the bill with it at 85, and it'll be a game changer.
And just sweat profusely on hotel sheets. Perfect.
That's the plan, one way or the other. We'll wind down the weekend edition here of the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe.
This show has had more offense than Nebraska baseball today. I like this.
I know. The Average Joe Sports Show YouTube channel, Twitter, AJ Sports Radio. Catch Sharpie, of course, with Gary and Matt weekday mornings on 1620 The Zone. Catch us 4 to 6 on the Average Joe Sports Show Monday through Friday. Weekend edition is Saturdays, yes, but the Sunday live is at 10:30.
Yeah,
and
I've heard it's awesome.
No,
I've heard it's great to be a part of.
Well, we'd have you on, but apparently you have computer issues.
I do. So I got a brand new computer, and somehow it decided it will not do sound. The only way I can get sound is Bluetooth. I need to talk to Elijah or the IT department. Do we have an IT department? I don't think we do.
Elijah. It is Elijah.
I tried updating drivers. I tried everything. It's like nothing will play out of speakers. I plug in headphones. It doesn't work. So I guess, so then the Bluetooth speaker was dying. So I had to switch. It's just a disaster.
All right.
It is not good.
We'll set up some remote control with the IT department, and the IT department will get to work on that.
Be a great sponsorship too. I mean, honestly, and if you're an IT professional out there and you want to take your business to the next level, if you want to make your business above average, right? Above average, you can be one of our above average partners on this here show.
Hey, are you guys interested with Nebraska baseball?
Generally speaking,
them winning, or when they lose, what Will's going to say after the game?
I am kind of shifting to what he says after the game because it's
getting a little saucy.
Yeah, he's pissed. He should be.
Should be. His team got too fat and happy in the offseason with guys that were returning. That's what happened. And then they suffered a major injury, but pitching hasn't been the downfall of why they're they're 1-6.
Well, I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. With what the pitching staff is, you need to go put up 6 runs a game. But with what you have returning, 6 runs a game should be doable, but it hasn't been. How are you, one of the most experienced guys in the team, getting back-picked at 3rd with 1 out?
It's code red.
Disaster. That's disaster stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nebraska did pull off the hidden ball trick too, so it might be a little bit of karma there.
But why? Why, with 1 out, with a chance for a sacrifice fly, are you getting that big a secondary lead?
Yeah,
that's baseball fundamental stuff. There's no reason to.
There isn't. You're right. I didn't see it though. I don't know if it was some sort of filthy move that the guy had or what. Did you actually see it?
So we're talking about Carey last night at 3rd.
Yeah.
Not really.
Killed an inning.
But why were you far enough off a 3rd?
That's
what it was. At that moment where you know how important your run is.
Yeah.
It's just they don't run the bases very well. And it's not, so Nunez didn't have a good night last night, but you go, okay, he's a freshman. It's the thing it's their veteran guys that are struggling at the plate or making just horrendous base running errors.
Carey stole home a couple years ago, so he's usually a pretty good base runner. But
Nunez, as a true freshman, has the most mature at bats of anyone on the team, which is an indictment of everybody else on the team.
They whiff a lot. Like that is what is concerning. It's like it's like contact is not prioritized or something or reinforced because they just whiff. Well, I'm not even talking about just strikeouts. I'm talking during at bats. They're just whiff.
They don't play. Like last year, one thing that propelled them in their run at the end of the year and then into Omaha and making the NCAA is they played with a sense of urgency. Now, granted, they were still going through it midweek, but on the weekend, they were on the top step of the dugout. They were jawing. They were having fun. They just don't play. They play not to lose, and they're losing. They don't have that piss and vinegar of their head coach. And he's even going through it. So they're just their identity that we thought they were going to have at the beginning of the year. They haven't even come close to that.
And listen, I like Bolt. We all like Bolt. Bolt's awesome, right? But listen, if the team's playing tight, as a head coach, that's on you to figure out, right? Like I don't think you can just kind of put it on the guys because to some degree it's like, well, the players got to make plays. Yeah, I get it. But what tone are you setting? Is there too much pressure? What are you doing as a head coach to depressurize the situation? Because right. So part of it's on him and he needs to figure out the guys that don't play tight. Right.
Where did it start going south on this team? Was it the Louisiana series where they lose back-to-back games? Was it the Kansas State loss down in Frisco? Because nobody going into the LSU game, it was you be competitive. They just got LSU got beat by Omaha. Keep that thing close and show that you can take on a top 25 team. Well, you should have beaten K-State. You certainly should have won the series against Louisiana. Somewhere in there, something went really, really wrong.
So I think, the Louisiana series, we went, Louisiana's good, and that's on the road, and, it's a team against the South. Instead of going, man, Nebraska's got to find a way to not lose a doubleheader. Nebraska's a top 25 team as well. And then the following week, they're playing good competition. They're not a very good team right now. And what has happened is
very different than the conversation we were having preseason, though. That's the thing, right? It's like preseason, we were all feeling pretty bullish, pretty good.
It's a kid like the Will Bolt teams since he started his first year at Nebraska. The teams that have done well for Will Bolt are the teams that match that gritty beats gritty personality. And this team, similar to that team 2 years ago, they had Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews, but that team from top to bottom kind of lacked that gritty beats pretty mentality. I see the same thing with this team this year. They're not taking gritty at bats. You have pitchers that, I think you're a little bit screwed since McConaughey's been out and you've lost Timmerman as well.
But to be fair, you said this earlier, Elijah, and I agreed with you. Will Walsh moving into the Friday night slot has been serviceable enough that he's giving you a chance to win games. But you said that right. You got to almost every game you got to go into thinking you're going to win 6 because there's going to be that one inning where you give up a crooked number. I just think they are so inconsistent that it is lineup gymnastics where they're not sticking with the same guys. And I tell you what, it's affecting guys about being in and out of the lineup. And then like Drew Christo kind of is the epitome of this team. Like you don't know what Drew Christo you're going to get. Are you going to get the good one, the okay one, or the really bad one? But you're still going to run him out there.
Yeah, and that is the issue. You're getting all three instead of just the one you want.
And so if
what do you guys do with the
pressing? If the team is pressing, what are you doing with the lineup? Like that's showing that you're pressing a little bit too. Do you just
settle now, guys? I mean, do you just kind of here's my lineup moving forward and we run with you guys?
They need some stability.
Don't they have like 7 games outside of the conference right now where they've got like Creighton and I think they play Omaha. They've got Oregon State.
Oregon State, dear Lord.
Right. But they've got
that's
like
coming up this.
they've got like 2 weeks before they got to get it right in conference play. The only way into the NCAA tournament really is to get into the Big Ten tournament and win it at this point, right?
They got to get it right this weekend.
Get right for 7 games and just figure out how to be competitive again. And if it's got to be what Grady meets pretty type baseball, okay, figure that out. But you've lost to USC, which was a winnable series. You got one more game, 2 more games with that,
and you got to go 2-0 in my book.
The guy pitching for USC last night is a dude, and they're going to face another good arm today. They're struggling against number ones, which I didn't think they'd struggle this bad against teams' number 1 guys.
Which sets the tone for the rest of the series, unfortunately.
Well, you have to be careful here because the goal this year was to host a regional, and that's out the window now. But you can still, because of the conference, because you still don't face Oregon. Now you're fighting for position to keep your head above water and then get to Omaha and try and get on a run. But the whole offseason was, I like this team. Yeah. This is a team that can be back to hosting a regional in Lincoln. That's out the window, and you still have a lot of baseball to play. So that's going to be the challenge for Will, is to keep these guys on track so they don't let this season go south.
It's to me, it's at the point where you can't afford to drop series anymore. Every single weekend, you got to go at least get 2. Every single weekend moving forward. I think you got to get the next 2 against USC. Oregon State's going to be a tough one next weekend. But if you're looking at conference play, you can no longer afford to drop conference series. It's at that point of the season where it's margin for error is thin in the Big Ten. And with how this team has started off, the margin's almost nothing right now.
This is a very offensive conversation to people that are diehard Nebraska baseball fans that don't ever want to let it go. They think DVH is coming back.
Well, listen, I think some bats are coming around though too. I didn't see how he did last night necessarily, but Tyler Stone had a pretty good series against Pepperdine, and that's a nice big power hitter from the left side.
Well,
right, he's got that nice looking, poor man's Schwarber.
Can we do it on the weekend against not midweek pitching?
Yeah.
They needed exactly what they got out of Pepperdine, to win 2 games and to have some feel-good moments. But the reality is your season is dictated by what you do on the weekends from here on out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Pretty long West Coast swing they're on right now too. So they've been on the road for a while. Might be good to get back home. But yeah, it's Oregon State coming up next weekend at home.
And the other thing is people, everybody's gone through the gauntlet of emotions with Nebraska athletics this year. Baseball was one of those sports that was going to keep you really happy in the spring and into the early summer. And if they don't find a way to win this series, and even if they get swept, man, it's going to be tough to re-engage with Nebraska baseball. And you'll be like, geez, now basketball is essentially over. I'm wanting to pay attention to this. And
is it football season yet?
I'm going to be walking over to Doleman instead of walking into Haymarket
That's
Park.
Right. Nebraska softball. They 8-run Minnesota yesterday, and you can catch them on Nebraska Public Media today at 1:00.
Who's doing the game?
Somebody better get ready and do that, actually.
Yeah. So Bill Doleman is like, wrap this SOB up. I've got to get to Westo.
For people that don't, and Rhonda, she's on the back 9 and has this one last run with Jordy. If people have not seen Jordy Ball pitch, they've not seen her in the circle. If you can't make it to Bowling today, watch Bill. But you've got to see her in person. I mean, she's amazing. You would think, and all of us go, I could hit her. Hell no. We would all be whiffing. But she's going to fall under that category of Nebraska athletes, male or female, that you must watch in person and you'll remember for a long time. She's that friggin' good. And unfortunately, there have been times this year where it's just Jordy and the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm.
But she's getting 500 on the season too, as well as 12-3 through a 1-hitter yesterday. So
in a university full of incredible female athletes right now, I think she's atop the podium. It's incredible what she
Let me
does.
ask you this with Jordy, what's her best pitch? Is it the rise? Is it the screw? Is it the fastball? I mean, what with her repertoire, Bill, just as you've kind of followed along, what's
I think it's any of them. I think she can throw any pitch she wants to at any time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I watched the game. You know, I watched as much as I possibly can. I certainly watched their game yesterday. Yeah, like Gary said, there's just something special about her. And they got one more season with her. They got this year, but they're going to go as far as she can take them. It's going to be an NCAA tournament team, and there's no reason why with her. The bats come. Nebraska's hit 63 home runs on the season.
Yep.
Last year they hit 61. So they're halfway through the year, and they've already surpassed their home run total of last year. So they've got the long ball, and they've got the best pitcher perhaps in the country, the best player in the country. Rhonda Ravel has been around forever, and she deserves to have a team like this. And you talk about transfer portal stuff. As I've been doing my notes on this, you see teams that just can't hit it in any sport. You bring in players in football or basketball. Kansas right now is licking its wounds on the men's side because they got it completely wrong. But they hit it. Rhonda Ravel hit it with players coming back from Arkansas and Purdue and Wisconsin, Arizona State, and Jordy coming in from Oklahoma, and it's all worked for the most part, right? Yeah. So
And let me add here with Jordy, she really only has like 3 pitches that she throws. She's got the four-seamer, which that's not what they call it in softball. I think it's the rise. Then she got the changeup that kind of falls off the face of the earth. And then so the rise, the four-seam, and then the change. That's like the 3 she kind of throws, and they're all just devastating. That's what makes her special, is like she's got the 3 that she just really locks in on. And as Bill said, they're all incredible. So whatever pitch she throws is her best one.
Our friend Brian Paul, BP, he was telling me how he went to it was like the Greater Omaha Sports Commission banquet where different players get honored for they win some award, right? And he said he's like behind in like a buffet line, and there's a woman in front of him in a nice dress, and he's like, God, that lady is ripped, looking like Sarah Connor from Terminator or something, just wow. and then he gets around the corner and it's Jordy Ball. Right. Mm-hmm. And she's like, and at the time she's like 17, and he was like, what the hell kind of like physical freak is this lady, And so that's another thing that maybe doesn't translate to television. Right. You just, but no, she's built differently.
She's pretty driven. I met her and her dad, Dave, really, really good family when they were at Papillion La Vista, and she was a freshman, because people said, hey, you got to go watch her pitch. And Papillion La Vista, which has got an incredible softball program. I mean, you were like, wow. And she's just different. She's really driven. She decommitted from Nebraska. I mean, she decommitted and didn't know what was going to happen. She ended up at Oklahoma, and we know the rest of the story. She gets engaged to a Trey Fromm, who's from Elkhorn, who was on the Nebraska baseball roster. And so she comes back here. She has the injury last year, and so she had to sit out all year when, they built the whole program around her last year. Remember, they expanded bowling. They had all these cool things, and then the season kind of just fell off. And for her to stick with it and to come back this year, I mean, it's great. It's interesting. We started this segment way back about 4 hours ago talking about Mark Manning, how long he's been here. And Mark got hired in 2000, which ironically, Mark Manning and John Cook were nearly hired at about the same time. Rhonda's been the softball coach since 93. And longtime coaches that right now, you can make a case, have their programs at the top of the food chain when it comes to Nebraska athletics in terms of success or current success.
Pretty good stuff. Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse. That is Mark Kraynak. That is Bill Doleman. Elijah Herbel is off to umpire. Chris Schmidt. Sunday live tomorrow.
Hey, hold on here 1 second. Because we're all going to watch, we're going to have split screen. We're going to watch basketball today, and we're going to have Bill on. Can we come up with a word that Bill uses during the telecast?
That one more thing. Game?
One more thing. No. Can you give us a shout out? Can you get us a one more thing? Can you weave that in? One more thing about Jordy. I mean, it's easy to weave in. It shouldn't be hard.
Doleman's going to put together the average Joe drinking game during the broadcast. Can you do that, Bill? I love that question.
The drinking game?
The word. What word? Every time Bill says this word, I
thought you wanted me to grab a bottle of Woodford and have a drinking game. Oh,
Carey style. Bill Doleman's up in the booth.
Well, Doleman from the bleachers. I love it. With his shirt off.
Who's doing the game with you?
Marin is doing the game with me,
Okay.
so she'll be great. She's about to have the greatest broadcast of her life.
Because I was just trying to think, because like you can talk about batting average, and if the next word could be Joe, right? But I just don't know how you could fit that in. Is there anybody on the team, Jordy?
See you work.
She's got a great average. See, that's hard to do too.
An
Yeah,
average.
I like the really emphasizing one more thing somewhere in the broadcast.
All right.
Yeah.
Bill's like, you goons, leave me alone. I got to go work.
I'm just trying to stay employed.
Yeah. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Average Joe Sports Show YouTube. Sunday live tomorrow, 10:30. Take care.